The morning they moved me out of my office, I stood in the hallway and watched. Clifford Nash was 29 years old and had been with the company for exactly 31 days. He was arranging things on my desk like he was decorating a dorm room, a coffee mug that said Future Leader, a framed copy of his Wharton diploma, a small succulent in a white pot. I had a client file in my hand I'd been managing since before he graduated high school. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, then turned and walked to my new workspace in the corner. That was the moment I understood exactly what was happening and exactly what I was going to do about it. My name is Gerald Holt. I'm 54 years old. For 21 years, I built the regional division of a mid-size commercial insurance brokerage in the Midwest. I started as a junior account rep with a used briefcase and a list of cold leads nobody else wanted. By the time Norman Sloan from HR called me into that meeting, I was managing a 30-client book generating $6.2 million in annual premiums. I knew every client by name. I knew their operations, their seasonal cash flow problems, their renewal timelines. I knew which ones needed 3 weeks' notice before any policy conversation and which ones needed you to ask about their kids before you touched a single number. Norman didn't look at me when he said it. "We're going in a different direction, Gerald." He kept his eyes fixed on a point just above my head, cleared his throat. "The leadership team feels fresh perspectives will strengthen the division going forward." I let the silence sit for a moment. "Who's taking over?" "Clifford Nash. He joined us last month from the corporate office." The 29-year-old. He has an impressive background. MBA from Wharton. Walter feels he brings the kind of forward-thinking energy the division needs right now. I almost said something. I didn't. "Your title will change to senior advisor. Same benefits package. We value your institutional knowledge." Institutional knowledge? That's what they call it when they want your brain, but not your chair. I nodded, picked up my folder, and walked out. 2 days later, I found out the rest of it. I wasn't looking for anything, just scrolling through LinkedIn on my phone during lunch. Clifford had posted a photo, him and his father at some charity golf event. His father was tagged, Dean Nash. I clicked the profile without thinking much of it. Third connection, mutual contact, Walter Grayson. I scrolled through Dean Nash's photos. There was Walter, arm around Dean's shoulder at Pebble Beach. The caption said, "Annual tradition, 14 years running." I put my phone down and finished my sandwich. This wasn't about fresh perspectives. This wasn't about forward-thinking energy or MBA credentials. Walter Grayson had handed my division to his golf buddy's kid, and he'd done it quietly enough that nobody had to say it out loud. That changed things for me, not in the way you might expect. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way that makes you do something stupid. I was clear. There's a difference. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. My son Nolan came in around 10 and saw me there. Same spot I'd been in for 2 hours. "You eat dinner?" he asked. "There's leftover chili on the stove." He heated some up, brought 2 bowls, and sat down across from me. He looked at the legal pad. I'd written maybe 6 lines and crossed out 4 of them. "How bad is it?" he said. "They gave my position to a 29-year-old whose father golfs with the CEO." Nolan put his spoon down. "Are you serious? 21 years? Not a performance issue, not a budget issue. A favor." He was quiet for a moment. He's 23, just starting to figure out how workplaces actually operate. "So what do you do?" "I think about that carefully," I said. "There's a wrong way to handle this and a right way. The wrong way feels better in the short term, and the right way takes longer." I tapped the pen against the table. "But it's the only one that actually works." Nolan looked at the legal pad. "What's that?" "Auctions," I said. "I'm writing down options." He finished his chili and didn't push me for more than that. That was one thing I always appreciated about him. He knew when to let a thing breathe. I stayed up until midnight. By the time I went to bed, I had a plan. Not the whole thing, not every step, but enough to know the direction. The next morning, I moved into my corner workspace. Half the size of my old office, no window. The view was a copy machine and a supply closet. My nameplate said Senior Advisor. I sat down, opened my laptop, and got to work. Not the work they assigned me. The other kind. Before I handed over the client files, I spent 3 evenings going through every folder carefully. I gave Clifford everything that was documented, everything on record. Clean, complete, organized. Exactly what was in the system. What I kept was everything else. Santo Ferrante runs a regional distribution operation out of Chicago. He's been our client for 11 years. What the file doesn't say is that Santo won't discuss business before he's had his second coffee, which means nothing before 9:15 a.m. It doesn't say that you lead with his son's baseball team or the conversation never gets off the ground. It doesn't say that he once walked out of a meeting with a competing broker because the guy checked his phone twice. None of that is in any database. It lived in 11 years of Tuesday morning phone calls and 4 in-person visits a year where I never once looked at my watch. Howard Larkin, construction and property client, 800 kiloish in annual premiums. The file says he's been with us 9 years. It doesn't say he needs 3 weeks notice before any policy change discussion, not 2 weeks, not 10 days, 3 weeks. Rush him and he goes cold. He'd done it once before with a previous rep and never fully came back. Lorraine Westerly, retail chain, 12 locations. Signs nothing in Q4. Personal policy, no exceptions. A former rep had tried to push a renewal through in November once and lost the account for 2 years. I got her back. It took 14 months. None of that went into the folders I handed Clifford. He never asked about any of it. He was too focused on his restructuring proposal, a plan to consolidate and streamline the book into what he called a scalable service model. On paper, it looked sharp. In practice, it was going to walk straight into every landmine I'd spent years mapping. I finished organizing my corner desk, made a cup of coffee, and waited. 3 weeks in, Clifford scheduled his first major client meeting with Santo Ferrante. He sent me a calendar invite the afternoon before. Knowledge transfer call, 30 minutes. I joined at the scheduled time. He had his laptop open, his restructuring proposal pulled up, and a notepad full of bullet points. He asked me about the account history, the premium structure, the renewal timeline. I answered everything he asked. He never asked about Santo's son. He never asked about the 915 rule. He was already moving on to his next question before I finished answering the one before it. I didn't volunteer anything he didn't ask for. The next afternoon, Philip Odom from finance stopped by my desk. Philip had been with the division for 9 years. He had a habit of delivering bad news in a flat, factual tone, like he was reading a weather report. Ferrante meeting ended in 8 minutes, he said. Clifford's back in his office with the door closed. I nodded. Thanks, Philip. He stood there a second. That's it. Just thanks. For now, I said, and went back to my work. 2 days later, Howard Larkin got a call from Clifford, proposing a policy consolidation. No advance notice, no lead-up conversation. Just a Tuesday morning call out of nowhere suggesting changes to a structure Howard had been comfortable with for 9 years. Howard told him he'd think about it. Howard never said he'd think about it. When Howard Larkin said he'd think about it, it meant he was already looking elsewhere. Lorraine Westerly's situation was simpler and worse. Clifford emailed her a renewal proposal on November 3rd. She didn't respond. Her assistant called our front desk 4 days later and said Lorraine would be revisiting her insurance relationships in the new year. Carolyn Briggs from Analytics came by my desk that Thursday. She'd been with the division for 7 years, started as a junior analyst, and built herself into the best data person I'd ever worked with. She had a way of looking at a spreadsheet and seeing the story underneath the numbers before anyone else did. She sat down across from me without being invited and kept her voice low. Howard Larkin is telling people he's shopping around, she said. I heard it from his CFO's assistant. I know. And Westerly. I know that too. She looked at me for a moment. You're not surprised. No. Are you going to do something about it? I looked at her. I'm doing something right now. It just doesn't look like anything yet. She studied my face, trying to read it. Then she nodded once and went back to her desk. She didn't push further. That was the thing about Carolyn. She understood that some processes needed room to run. What neither she nor Philip knew yet was that I'd already started laying groundwork 2 weeks earlier. The night after I found the LinkedIn photo, I'd made 3 phone calls. One to Santo Ferrante, one to Howard Larkin, one to Lorraine Westerly. Not about business. Just checking in, asking questions, listening. Planting the quiet understanding that I was still around, still reachable, still the person who actually knew their operations. None of them needed to be told anything. They just needed to know where to find me when the time came. The time came faster than I expected. Clifford made his real mistake at a full team meeting on a Wednesday morning. 14 people in the room, including Carol and Philip, and most of the account management staff. He stood at the whiteboard with a marker and laid out his theory about the recent client pushback. His conclusion was that the transitions had been deliberately complicated by an incomplete handover of account information. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. He was looking directly at me when he said it. The room went quiet in that particular way rooms do when everyone realizes something is about to happen and nobody wants to be the one who set it off. I didn't say anything right away. I opened my laptop, found the email thread I'd been keeping ready for exactly this moment. It was dated 8 months earlier, a 6-page account summary I'd sent to Walter, to Clifford's predecessor, and to the full leadership team. Client profiles, relationship notes, key preferences, renewal timelines, communication protocols. Everything I could document, organized, and delivered. I connected my laptop to the conference room screen without asking permission. The email thread came up: date, recipients, subject line, full content. 3 people in that chain had replied. Nobody had followed up. Nobody had acted on any of it. I documented everything that could be documented, I said. My voice was level. What's in that file is everything the system can hold. What isn't in there is earned over time. That part isn't a handover item. The room stayed quiet. Walter was standing near the back wall. His expression did something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, something closer to recalculation. He pulled Clifford aside in the hallway after the meeting ended. I didn't follow. I didn't need to hear the conversation. The important thing had already happened in that room, in front of everyone who needed to see it. That evening, Carolyn stayed late. She found me at my desk around 7, coat still on, working through a client summary. "You had that ready," she said. "It wasn't a question. I keep good records." She sat down. "The quarterly numbers are going to be bad. They're going to be accurate." I said, "That's different from bad." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "What do you need from me? Your best work on the data. Clean, clear, no spin." She nodded. "When we've got 9 days before the board presentation," she pulled her coat off and sat back down at her own desk. That was the moment I knew she was in. Not because she said so, but because she stayed. Philip found out through Carolyn, the way he found out most things. He stopped by my desk the next morning with 2 coffees and set one down without a word. I looked up, he shrugged. "Figured you could use it," he said. "Some things don't need a long conversation. Carolyn and I worked late 2 nights in a row before the board presentation." She pulled every data point from the past 90 days. Client satisfaction surveys, renewal pipeline, new business numbers, account activity logs. I structured the narrative around what the numbers were actually saying, not what anyone would want them to say. We made it clean, made it simple, made it the kind of presentation where every slide answers a question before anyone can ask it. Client satisfaction down 28%. New business acquisition down 31%. 3 major accounts flagging non-renewal, including Howard Larkin's 800 Cullio book. Response time to client inquiries up 40% since the transition. No softened language. No transitional challenges framing, just the data laid out in a sequence that told one story and told it clearly. The morning of the presentation, I sat in the back corner of the boardroom. Clifford stood at the front. Walter sat at the head of the table. Judith Harwell from the board sat to his left, watching the screen with the kind of stillness that means someone is paying very close attention. Clifford clicked through the slides. With each one, Walter's posture changed in small ways. Shoulders tightening, jaw setting. The kind of physical adjustment people make when the ground is shifting under them and they're trying not to show it. "These figures reflect a transitional period," Clifford said somewhere around slide 6. "We're building new systems, and that creates short-term friction." Walter cut him off. "Howard Larkin called me personally 2 days ago. He used the word done. That's an 800 kilo count." The room was quiet. Clifford looked at his notes. "I believe there was a miscommunication around the timing of the proposal. He called me," Walter said again, "not you, me. Because he couldn't get a straight answer from anyone in this office." Judith turned toward the back of the room. "Gerald, your read on the Larkin situation." Every head turned. I straightened slightly. "Howard values consistency above everything else. He's not reacting to the policy changes. He's reacting to pace. He needed lead time and didn't get it. Can it be fixed?" Walter asked. "I can make a call today." Walter nodded once. "Do it." After the meeting broke up, Clifford caught me in the hallway. He kept his voice low, but there was an edge in it. "You built that presentation to take me down." I looked at him. I didn't feel the need to argue the point. "The presentation shows accurate data. That's all it does. You've been waiting for this since day one. Clifford, I said, keeping my tone even, you walked into client meetings without the context you needed. I handed you everything that was on record. What wasn't there? That's not something you can transfer in a folder. It takes time. He didn't have anything to say to that. I walked back to my desk and called Howard Larkin. He picked up on the second ring. Gerald. The tension in his voice came down about half a notch just from hearing my name. That told me most of what I needed to know. Howard. I heard there was some confusion about the consolidation proposal. Confusion, he repeated. The kid called me on a Tuesday morning with no warning and started talking about restructuring a policy setup that's been working fine for 9 years. That shouldn't have happened that way. No, it shouldn't. A pause. Where have you been? Still here. Different role, I heard. Another pause. You the one who can actually fix this? Yes. Then fix it. I spent the next 10 days working through the client list. Personal calls, personal meetings. Howard agreed to stay after a 45-minute conversation and a commitment that nothing would change on his account without a minimum 3 weeks' notice going forward. Lorraine Westerly agreed to restart her renewal conversation in January, her timeline, her pace. Santo Ferrante I called on a Thursday morning at 9:20, asked about his son's team, spent 15 minutes talking about their playoff run, and then we talked business. He stayed too. The team's energy shifted. When I spoke in meetings, people listened and stayed listening. When Clifford tried to redirect, I'd catch people glancing my way before they responded, not because I was doing anything to cause it, just because the room had its own memory. The power was moving and everyone could feel it, including Clifford. Walter called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon, 17 days after the quarterly presentation. Clifford was already seated when I walked in. Judith Harwell sat in the chair by the window. Walter gestured to the remaining seat. We made an error in judgment, Walter said. His voice had the careful quality of someone who had rehearsed this. The board and I have been discussing the situation, and we'd like to reinstate you as regional director. Full title, full authority. Clifford would move into an internal operations role focused on process development. I let the silence stretch for a moment. I have 3 conditions, I said. Walter nodded. Let's hear them. First, any strategic change to client management requires my sign-off before implementation. Second, my compensation reflects a 22% increase from my previous director salary. Third, Carolyn Briggs is promoted to senior analyst with a corresponding pay adjustment. Walter agreed to the first and third without hesitation. He leaned back slightly on the second. 12% is where we land on compensation, Gerald. That's a meaningful offer. I picked up my notebook from my lap. Stood up. Thank you for your time, Walter. He blinked. Gerald, I appreciate the clarity, I said, and I walked out. No raised voice, no speech. Just the door closing behind me with a regular click. The same sound it made 100 times a day. I went back to my corner desk, sat down, and opened my laptop. I had some paperwork to finish. The paperwork I was finishing that afternoon was the filing for Holt Advisory Group. I had started the process 3 weeks earlier, the same week Judith Harwell had pulled me aside after watching me handle the Ferrante situation from the back of a conference room. She hadn't said much that first conversation, just that she'd been watching how things were developing, that she had concerns about the direction of the division, and that she'd like to have a longer conversation when I had time. We'd had that conversation over coffee, off-site, on a Tuesday morning. By the end of it, she had seen my preliminary business plan, and I had a clear picture of what the next chapter looked like. I submitted my resignation the next morning. 1 page. Professional, effective, immediately. I left it on Norman Sloan's desk before 8 a.m. Carolyn's resignation landed in HR's inbox at 9:15. Phillips came in just before noon. By end of day, 4 more people from the team had submitted theirs. I hadn't asked any of them to do it. I hadn't needed to. They'd been watching the same situation I had, from closer up, and they'd made their own decisions. I drove home that evening, and Nolan was in the kitchen when I walked in. He took one look at my face and said, "You did it." Turned in my notice this morning. He nodded slowly. "How do you feel?" I thought about that for a second. Like I put down something heavy I'd been carrying for a while without realizing how heavy it was. He was quiet, then he said, "Was it worth it?" The whole thing, staying patient, letting it play out. "The wrong move at the wrong time would have made me the problem," I said. I needed them to be the problem. Clearly. In front of everyone who needed to see it. He poured 2 glasses of water and pushed one across the counter to me. Back when this started, you said the right way was patient. How far back were you actually planning? The day I noticed Walter bringing Clifford to executive lunches, I said. About 3 months before the demotion. Nolan stared at me. That long, you don't wait until the flood to start building, I said. You build when the sky's still clear. He shook his head, half smiling. I'm going to remember that. Holt Advisory Group opened its doors in a modest office space on the industrial side of downtown. Inverted brick building, good bones, clean lines. The windows on the east side looked out over the rail yard, which I liked. You could watch things actually moving from up there, freight trains loaded and heading somewhere with purpose. It was a good view for early mornings. Carolyn took the lead on building out our analytics framework. Philip set up the financial infrastructure. The other 4 who'd come over handled account management and operations. 7 people total, all of them there because they chose to be. Santo Ferrante called before I'd finished setting up my desk. I heard you left, he said. I did. You taking clients, selective ones? Put me down, he said, and tell that kid at your old place to stop calling me. Howard Larkin signed a 2-year service agreement within 10 days. Lorraine Westerly called on a Wednesday morning and asked what our onboarding process looked like. She signed before the end of that week. Within 90 days, Holt Advisory Group was serving 5 former clients and 8 new ones. Judith Harwell had connected us to 3 of those new accounts through her board network. The revenue trajectory was ahead of every projection I'd built into the business plan. Clifford Nash was let go from the firm 6 weeks after I left. I heard it from Philip, who still had contacts there. Walter had taken on direct client management responsibilities, something he'd successfully avoided for the better part of a decade. By all accounts, he was not enjoying it. 3 months after I walked out, my phone rang on a Tuesday morning. Walter Grayson, I let it ring twice. Gerald, he said, I'll get to the point. The Ferrante account. We've been unable to maintain that relationship since your departure. I was wondering if, in a consulting capacity, you might be open to involvement. I'm open to it, I said. A pause. Good. What would that look like? $12,000 a month. 3-month minimum engagement. I work directly with the client, my approach. No oversight from your end. A longer pause. That's workable, he said. I'll have a contract sent over by end of day. I hung up and sat back in my chair. Outside the window, a long freight train was moving through the rail yard, slow and steady, fully loaded, headed somewhere specific. I watched it for a minute before I went back to work. Nolan stopped by the office that afternoon. I told him about the call. He sat with that for a second. He's paying you to do what you used to do for him. At a better rate, I said. And you're okay with that? It was never about Walter, I said. Santo, Howard, Lorraine, they deserve consistency. They deserve someone who actually knows their business. If Walter's writing the check for that, that's just how the math worked out. Nolan nodded. He looked out at the rail yard for a moment, then back at me. You're good, he said. Yeah, I said, I'm good, and I meant it. If you've stayed with me to the end of this, you already know this story isn't really about a job title. You've probably had your own version of that Thursday morning in HR, where someone with less time in than you have read your value off a script and called it a business decision. Maybe you handled it well, maybe you didn't. Either way, you know what that moment does to a person. What I hope this story says is that the thing they couldn't take from me, the relationships, the trust, the 21 years of showing up and knowing my clients better than they knew themselves, that was always mine. Titles can be reassigned. What you've genuinely built cannot. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below. Tell me about a time you had to activate your own plan B. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. There are more stories like this one coming.